Hi there. This week at Typical Books, Books of Terror, or Typical Books of Terror, I'm still reading Cold Chills. Yes, I had changed the name of the channel on YouTube alone, but the website is still Typical Books. I was just running an experiment, so I'm not really sure if I should keep it as Books of Terror to drive home the fact that this is a show about books, or Typical Books, which was like a hard thing to change away from because Typical Books is what the channel's always been called and what the website's always been called. And I had gone by a moniker of Typical Lydia for a very long time. So yeah, because it was atypical books, right? So if you have any ideas on what I should continue to call the channel, if Typical Books is fine, if Typical Books of Terror is too long, those are my ideas, but let me know what you think down below. Anyway, on Typical Books this week, I'm still reading Cold Chills. I'm halfway through reading a story a day or thereabouts and really enjoying it. It's got a lot of carnival stories, which I guess works for the time because that was, one of the more entertainments that would swing through town. We have a little midway here, and I thought because I've been reading this Robert Bloch stuff and these old-timey sort of carnival horror stories, I'd like to walk around the little midway, little fun fair. Closest thing that we have to like a carnival coming through town these days. And it was $25 just to walk around, so I didn't. I'll go find a nice family fun fest during the farmers market season and get sort of the same idea. Anyhow, I digress. Really, really good stuff. Of course, there are stories that I recognize or vaguely recognize in here, and I am very interested to read the rest of it because, as I'd said before, he has little snippets and little bios of each story, so it's very, very interesting. A lot of 50s jive talk, and his dislike of hippies is hilarious. I finished reading Lock Every Door. To those of you who said I should throw the book out, yes, I did. I threw it in the dumpster. Straight in an actual dumpster. And I didn't take out any other garbage. I didn't put it in a bag. I walked out there with the book alone to the dumpster and threw it in. Now, for those that are just tuning in now, it's not because I don't like Riley Sager. I really, really, really liked Lock Every Door. It was super fun. It was a cozy little thriller horror, and I loved it. And if anyone's ever been touched by someone going missing in their life, that sort of thing is very interesting to me and very heartbreaking, so it was really cool to read a fairly light-hearted horror mystery that had to do with that. And it involves writers, because there's a writer that lives in this huge building that is sort of a key to figuring out the mystery that is going on in Lock Every Door. And I really enjoyed that angle. This old, kind of crotchety, cranky old writer that inscribes books to people that are apartment sitting in this giant old mansion style apartment building in New York. It's really cool. But if you missed the last episode, someone had left bogies and slime and spit and blood and dead bugs, 2 or 3 dead bugs, and cheesy dust throughout the whole book. It was disgusting. It was so gross. And I thought of the idea of cutting with scissors out the little corners of the pages where they'd made messes. The bottoms of the books was mostly fine except a few spots, but the top edges, ugh. So yeah, I just threw it in the garbage. This is like a public service announcement. Wash your hands. For once. Or something. I'm starting to get really grossed out thinking about it, but yeah. Just wash your fucking hands, right? If you're gonna read a book and you're eating your cheesies or whatever, use chopsticks. It's fun. Chopsticks with popcorn, chopsticks with chips, chipsticks, right? That's what my husband has taken to calling them lately. Chipsticks. It keeps the dust off your hands and you can play act a little bit of weeaboo, gajin thing if you're eating all your snacks foods with chopsticks. And maybe it's a little bit of hunger control because you're eating them a little slower, not just shoveling them in your mouth. Like I picture the person who read that book did. Rant over. I really loved Lock Every Door. I'm again still excited about reading more Riley Sager as it pops up. I was hoping to find some more today at the library book sale, which I'll talk about more in a minute. I finished reading My Dark Vanessa. I couldn't remember exactly where I'd gotten this book, but I'm positive it was from the Salvation Army. I'd popped over there, checked out their book section. I do that about every 3 to 6 months, I guess. And yeah, like, it's hard to tell because it just says $2.99 and the sticker doesn't mean anything, but I really liked this. It is way darker than I thought it would be. It is a very good, like, Ally McBeal meets Lolita, if that is something that makes sense to you. It makes sense to me. I wasn't an Ally McBeal fan. I hesitate to say I was a Lolita fan because it's a beautifully written book about a very terrible thing, and so is this. This book's been around for long enough that I don't think I would need to really regurgitate any warnings about the book. You can read the synopsis and understand that it's about a teacher who falls in love with a student, and it's from the student's point of view and how she protects her predator, her abuser. So if that sort of thing doesn't sound like a fun time for you, it's not a fun time. It's not a fun time for anyone, really. But if that is something that you shouldn't read, I really steer you hard away from this because it does get explicit. Very explicit. And not explicit as far as porn in that way, but it's handled in a really, really delicate way when they're describing what happens in their first more adult encounter when she is 15 years old. It's handled very well. It's crazy to me that this is a debut novelist, or it was crazy until I read, of course, they have their Master of Fine Arts in literature or English or whatever, but they also live in the same area as Stephen King and maybe had a little like extra influence, more so than an average writer living around. Their father worked at one of the radio stations that Stephen King owned. So they weren't like bosom buddies by any means, but having that sort of creativity that close has got to rub off on you. I think it's super cool. So I don't know, I might look up more of Kate Elizabeth Russell's work. Not that this is really my genre, being like dark, general literature, but I don't know, it was a really good read. I will say that. I really enjoyed it. I think partially because it is linked very well to that very transgressive and dark piece of literature, Lolita, and it uses it very, very well in the way that it's combined. If you've read Lolita and just sort of not want a sequel, but like want to see what this plays out like in this day and age, or someone who's very aware of Lolita, then this is that book, definitely. But yeah, so I enjoyed that, and it is just very well written. As far as an update on the backwards bookshelf, I am reading Cuts by Richard Laymon soon enough. I'm going to be reading Someone's Watching when I have time, so I'm going to kind of have to pause backwards bookshelf because there is 2 books on the go from it, so I'm not going to pick any more for the time being, but that's where My Dark Vanessa came from. Someone's Watching is on the pile that is growing right now because of the Reading and Rumps Richard Laymon read-a-thon. I'm also reading an e-arc right now for No End House. I started reading it, and that's a book that I'll be reading on my commutes because I don't take my paper books out of the house at all anymore. At all, except for when I'm traveling to my father's maybe, but other than that, it's being ebooks because it's just safer and it gives me a chance to read a lot of ebooks, and I've been experimenting a little bit with audiobooks. But yes, No End House has started out pretty strong, well written, very interested in that. I talked about it more in the previous episode, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the next video where I talk about new releases for June. And yes, the Richard Laymon read-a-thon, Reading and Rumps, is on right now. Week 1 starts now because it's the beginning of June, tomorrow. Among the Missing by Richard Laymon. I couldn't wait. I just started reading it today, and it fulfills the prompt in the first chapter. The prompt is, read a Laymon scene where hormones override common sense. Bonus points for someone investigating a noise in their underwear. If you are interested in reading along with the Richard Laymon read-a-thon, Reading and Rumps, which was created by Regina at Regina's Haunted Library alongside Alex, the bookubus, and also co-hosts Slime and Slashers, Kelsey, and D.L. Tillery, the Mistress of Darkness, Mistress of Horror, rather, but she's Mistress of Darkness too, and also myself and Merce from Harpies in the Trees, all reading along, and who else is hanging out? Spooky Noodles has expressed some interest, and Working Man Reads, so like there's a few of us kind of hanging out. You don't need to read the whole thing, like as the prompt says, read a scene in a Richard Laymon novel. So I've actually fulfilled that. I'm going to haul off and read the rest of the book because it's a highly digestible Richard Laymon novel, as are the other ones on the list. But for week 1, it's among the missing. At 2:32 in the morning, a jaguar rolls along the lonely road high in the California mountains. Behind the wheel sits a beautiful woman wearing only a skimpy, revealing nightgown. She's left her husband behind. She's after a different kind of man, someone as wild, daring, and passionate as herself. The man she wants is waiting for her with wild plans of his own. The man waits patiently in the woods. When the woman stops to pick him up, he suggests they go to the bend, where the river widens and there's a soft sandy beach. With stars overhead and moonlight on the water, it's the ideal place for love. But there will be no love tonight. In the morning, a naked body will be found at the bend, a body missing more than its clothes, and the man will be waiting for someone else. So yes, there are bonus points with this prompt for someone investigating a noise in their underwear. Someone has already investigated something kind of in their underwear, so we'll see if there's more of that. One of the next books coming up on Reading and Rumps is Darkness Tell Us by Richard Laymon, and for whatever reason, a lot of us have that on our lists, and a lot of the people that are reading along, maybe not formally participating and fulfilling every prompt, but reading a Richard Laymon book in June, are reading Darkness Tell Us. So if you have Darkness Tell Us on your shelves, definitely feel free to pick it up through June and join the read along. Now, I'm not going to talk about movies because I talk about movies a lot when I talk to Wes Knipe, my co-host at Dead Air. Splatterpictures.net is the podcast. And on Dead Air, we recently did Late Phases, but I lost all my audio, so we're going to have to skip an episode. But I have not seen Final Destination Bloodlines yet. I know a lot of people have, very excited, so I haven't read this issue of Rue Morgue yet either. But Rue Morgue has really been bulking up their book section. I mentioned this in the previous video when people were talking about some of the articles about summer reads that are false. There's no AI guaranteed in the book sections of Rue Morgue magazine, so definitely give it a go. That is absolutely a shameless plug for Rue Morgue magazine, being a Canadian publication and myself being Canadian and being a huge horror fan, that they cover horror books and film and games and everything and trinkets and stuff. Then yeah, that's really the go-to. Another go-to is the library book sale. But first, I did do some shopping on Amazon. Look at our holes. This is an anthology of voids and orifices, edited by Juan Valencia, and the concept by Valerie Complex. Now, Juan had mentioned this quite a while ago. I got very excited. The shipping to Canada was kind of high, so instead of like playing do-si-do and waiting a long time using an American address, I just hauled off and bought it. Money's money. It goes to a good place, and maybe I'll pick up another one that's signed and buy it in a better way than Amazon, because I know a lot of people dislike that, and not every dime goes to where it's supposed to. And where it's supposed to go is to the benefit of the indigenous Coachapa people of El Mayor in Mexicali, Mexico. So that is for a good cause. I'm very excited to read this. A fellow booktuber, Alex, who's also part of Reading and Rumps, has a story in this, and possibly others, because I haven't read the entire table of contents. Look at our holes. I don't know if it's going to end up on the extreme horror shelf like Juan's other book, even though he only edited this book, of course. But yeah, it's going to be transgressive, different, dark, weird, gross, bizarro. This, though, will be on the extreme horror shelf, I'm sure. Christopher Triana's Full Brutal. This is part of my ongoing journey to read the last, 12 books I have left to read on the extreme horror lit Reddit subgroup starter pack list. And I've been absolutely enjoying it, so I thought, you know what, I'll pick this up. It had a little percentage off for whatever reason, so I snagged this. It probably won't get read in June because I have a lot of books to read, but yeah, this will be the next on the extreme horror starter pack. I'm really looking forward to it because I started reading the first chapter. I like the tone already, sort of like Barbie Run Amok. Really cool looking stuff. So from the library book sale today, we're just freshly back from there, I found a couple things, but I found these two books, but this little tome ended up on the ground. I was looking at all of the like classic books and the antique books, They're all very cheap if they have any sort of damage or is extremely old. And this has a little like coffee stain on it. It's hardly noticeable. It's from 1926 and it's a copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Not something that I really need in my library, but not something that I would ever turn down. But I wasn't looking for it. I didn't even touch it, didn't pick it up, hadn't seen it. I literally turned around after looking at all the books and it was on the ground at my feet. And I was just taken with it. So yeah, it's a very cute, hardly read little copy. The ribbon was at one point, but yeah, it's in very good condition for its age. So aside from Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, I picked up two really cool books. Slade House by David Mitchell. I love this cover and I knew right away it would be something for me. It is a ghost story. It's not really horror proper, but it's a very beautiful little edition and I think that it'll be a nice cozy read, probably for December. Ghost stories for Christmas kind of thing. Turn down Slade Alley. Narrow, dank, and easy to miss, even when you're looking for it. Find the small black iron door set into the right-hand wall. No handle, no keyhole. But at your touch it swings open. Enter the sunlit garden of an old house that doesn't quite make sense, too grand for the shabby neighborhood and too large for the space it occupies. I am very much looking forward to this. Have you read Slade House? I understand that the author has many other titles. I never heard of him. Very interested in this. This book is from an author that we all know very well. It is Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination, and it is a Heritage Club edition with a beautiful little slipcase, a really gorgeous typeset. It's in its original fonts and original layout and just absolutely beautiful with red ink insets. I just absolutely love this and what they call mysterious cloth binding. It is quite mysterious. And I really, really love the look of this book. It looks so classic. The slipcase has a little bit of sun damage and that is why it was $5 whole. I am very pleased to have this in my collection because I'm not a Heritage Book Club collector by any means, but I really do like this edition. I have Tales of Mystery and Imagination upstairs in a different, 1960s or 70s binding, but this is really cool. It says that this is copyright 1941 and 1969, so I guess it's the 1970s. And the damage on here, the sun damage, that would take a little while maybe, the way that it's gone. So I'm guessing 1970s, I'll have to look it up. All the same, I'm really pleased to have this, whether it is printed yesterday or 100 years ago, because it just looks like a gorgeous binding that was done with care, and it's the sort of thing that I really want to have on my shelf. I'm going to try recoloring this a little bit, because there's no sense in I don't think it's going to ruin the value. I paid $5 whole for it. It's not worth the $50 that the pristine, new versions are worth. So there'd be really no harm in maybe trying to restore the slipcase. The book itself is in mint, wonderful, possibly unread condition. In case you wonder, like I did, because I'm traumatized now, about any damage to these books, because they are from a library book sale, and it's not all used library books. Of course, they get a lot of donations, right? So there is a little bit of slight water damage, showing a little staining from the black end papers on this book. But otherwise, there's no other marks inside of it. Thank God. There's no marks in the book from 1920s. So if someone can have a book from the 1920s and not manage to get food, bugs, blood, and piss and shit and spit in it, then I think that you can too. That is it for today. I know that a lot of us have read at least one story, if not everything, by Edgar Allan Poe. But if you've read Slade House, I'm very interested. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you ever so much for hanging out today, and have an ooky, spooky day.